Hello ladies and gents, it's EZScape, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about how to use arbitrary code execution and Generation 1 Pokemon games to warp to the credits in different video games. The first thing I'd like to explain is arbitrary code execution, or what I'll be referring to as ACE. Each video game system has something called an instruction pointer. This pointer will access somewhere in the game's memory and load different operations. In order to use this to your own benefit and make the game do what you want it to do, you have to make the instruction pointer point to somewhere in memory that you're able to control. An example of how to modify something in memory would be to move and discard items in the inventory in Pokemon. A great example of modifying memory in the Pokemon games would be the famous Hall of Fame warp. How you're able to do this is by starting a new game. Next, you'll want to save the game. By restarting the game while saving on a specific frame, you will corrupt the save file into thinking you have 255 Pokemon. By selecting Pokemon past the 6th slot, you'll be accessing different areas in memory, like the Pokédex or the inventory. By accessing the newly modified inventory, you can move and discard items to modify areas in memory. In this example, by tossing 138 of the item in the 36th item slot, you change the location for when you leave the house to the Hall of Fame. So now that we understand how to modify memory in the Pokemon games, we can now talk about how we can use this modified memory in other video games. And this video is supplied by Mr Cheeze. He's able to put code he wrote in Pokemon Red into a payload that will be ran in an entirely different game called Imagination. He does this by tossing specific amounts of glitch items in the item list that you make by doing the save corruption glitch in the Hall of Fame warp we spoke about earlier. Whenever you discard an item, it changes a single byte in memory, which is useful for writing code. After the code is written, it's moved to another location in memory that is unused by the second game, which in this case would be Imagination. You can change locations in memory in Pokemon by switching the location of the Pokemon. To transfer the memory in RAM to the second game, he simply pulls Pokemon Red out and puts Imagination in quickly, which is just another great demonstration of how pulling out quickly is always good practice. When turning off a Game Boy Color, the RAM won't be erased immediately. It will stick around for a while, so if you switch games quickly, the memory from one game will stick around for the second one. After playing through the beginning of Imagination, Mr. Cheeze finds an item in a chest called the Baloof Leaf. The item you use doesn't really matter, but having an item is a requirement for the glitch that he's going to be using in Imagination. By opening a menu at the same time you speak to an NPC, like the shopkeeper here, the menu will pop up and the game will have to wait until the menu is closed to display the text box from the shopkeeper. While he's in the menu, he uses the Baloof Leaf to display text, but since the game is trying to display this text box at the same time as the NPC text box, it reacts weird and starts displaying different areas in memory. After a while, it will access in memory the payload he wrote in Pokemon Red, which performs a switch changing the game from text mode to script mode, and then does a command that loads the credits for the game. While this is an amazing discovery, this doesn't necessarily mean that you can just swap game cartridges after putting some code into Pokemon and then warp to the credits of any game of your choice. So theoretically, only games that are able to access memory like that would work with this method. Otherwise, the memory would just sit there and nothing would happen. So I guess there's no other way to do this type of glitch in any other game. But perhaps by performing arbitrary code execution, we can. In the Pokemon games, there's an exploit known as the 8F exploit, and is very easy to set up and to perform. 8F is an item accessible in inventory that can execute game code. So if we were able to bring the 8F exploit to other games, there would be a lot that we could do. However, this isn't just as simple as switching game cartridges and perform an exploit, because if you do that, the game is just going to crash after being removed. This is because the Game Boy is reading the game from ROM, or read-only in memory, so if the game is removed, it won't be able to read anything. So in order to perform a swap, ZZAZZ performed arbitrary code execution using the 8F exploit and programmed the console to have the game run on RAM for exactly 4 seconds to perform the swap and disabled everything from the ROM to prevent crashing. After the 4 seconds are up, it will boot the game you inserted. So now you're able to perform arbitrary code execution in Pokemon and switch the games and have the code become executed once a new game is inserted. There are a lot of things that you can do with this, such as being able to play a Game Boy Color game without a Game Boy Color. You can play bootlegged or corrupted games by doing this because you're able to bypass the check the game does during boot up. You can change save data, and of course what y'all came here to see, warping straight to the credits for any game. In ZZAZZ's example, he was able to execute code that whenever Mario entered any stage in Super Mario Land 2, the game would play the credits. Tricks like this have been tested on several consoles, and currently the ones that work on are the Game Boy Color, Super Game Boy, and the Game Boy Pocket. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Huge shoutouts to Mr Cheeze, ZZAZZ, and ISSOtm for all their work on this subject. While these strategies most likely won't be used in any form of speedrunning other than meme categories, it's still fun to see just how far we can go into breaking our favorite games. If you liked the video, make sure to leave a like for support, and subscribe if you want to see more speedrunning related content. I hope you all have a beautiful life.
I know it's been a long time, wanna roll with your body to the sunrise. We can do anything like short time. I'm just waiting on you to bring it up for me. Bring it up.